some of the things that I have done, I don't even believe myself. But you don't need to die the amount of times that I have to get to a level where many of us want to be.
Right, thanks for coming tonight. You're in for something pretty special. I'm trying to remember when Ray and I first met. I'm Jack Stewart, by the way. This is the star of the show, Ray O'Brien, in case you can't tell from the pictures. Don't think grow my hair that long, Ray, anyway. Well, maybe.
November 2015, Jack.
2015 was it, Jonathan? Yes. We discovered tonight we don't really know each other at all. We had a couple of hours. Ray lives in Dartford, in Kent, which is what, 4-hour drive? 3-hour drive. And it was pretty amazing, wasn't it, the conversation?
It was extraordinarily amazing.
Yes. So I just want to ask you all questions to start with. I would like you to raise your hand if any of you have had any serious or life-threatening traumatic experiences. Just put your hand up, please, if you would. That's about 10 of you, thank you. And how many of you use those experiences to change your life and go and serve others? About half of that number. We should all feel very smug. Right, you'll see on the slide, on the screen tonight, quotes, usually in yellow, usually in italics. Have any of you heard of Joseph Campbell, an American mystical teacher? An amazing human being. And what Campbell's thesis was, I'll share that with you later. So perhaps that's, you can all read that, I'm assuming. I can't lend you any glasses if you can't. Perhaps some of us have to go through dark and devious ways before we can find the river of peace or high road to the soul's destination. You've got a person here tonight who's probably been there, done it, got the t-shirt. So, without further ado, what do you think life's purpose is? Some of the questions I'm going to ask are rhetorical. Have you heard of Eckhart Tolle, an American spiritual teacher? He says we're here for the soul to awaken. Campbell says it's to get ourselves in touch with the heartbeat of nature. Well, why should near-death experiences interest anybody, Ray? Why do you think, why have we got these people here tonight? Because they came on the strength of it, listening to someone who's had a few of them. Why should we be interested in near-death experiences?
Many aren't, that's the first answer I'll give. But like yourselves, I think it's something that isn't really touched upon here in the UK. It's a real sort of no-no. It's always based in, it's always going to happen to somebody else, but it's never going to happen to us. And I was the same, to be quite honest. If I always have to do it somebody else, so I'm not really interested in it. I've got a full life ahead of me, so don't bring the dark stuff up on me. So I think that's part of the reason. There's other parts. There could be life scripts, the way some of us are brought up. Some of us might have been brought up with a religious background. So with all of that genealogy and those overtones and those connotations that come with it, I think probably over the last 2 or 3 years things have changed quite dramatically, particularly in the States. But here I've noticed I have quite a few connections with the medical profession. And I'm starting to notice now that many doctors are coming up and kind of pulling me aside, and they want to know a little bit more about what's going on. Maybe I can talk to some of their patients, which has been happening in the past. So I think there's many answers to that question, but in general, that's what I've been sort of perceiving. I've been building my knowledge upon that.
So just if you could just describe briefly, Ray, what is it? I mean, I know we're going to spend the whole evening expanding on this. What is a near-death experience?
It can be classed as many things. Some people would class it as, if there was a plane crash or some natural disaster, you get many people say, I nearly got on the boat, I nearly got on the plane. So we've got that. I personally leave that to others. I try to specifically be within a verified event. So my background and my own NDE came through many cardiac arrests. So this is how it kind of affected me. It was that way.
You didn't have a lot of choice, did you?
I didn't. I thought I had a choice. My events, I was running away from a lot of things. And I was forewarned. I was forewarned by my mother. My mother was very, very spiritual. She sat me down at the kitchen table and pointed a finger at me and said, something very bad is going to happen to you unless you change. And I remember my reply back was, it'll have to be a pretty severe thing, Mum, because, you know, I've been through a few things. She went, it will, and we left it at that. And so Wednesday came, I was driving home, I was a mechanical engineer, had no interest really in near death or anything like that. A little voice whispered in my ear, told me I was going to die, and that was on Wednesday. And as soon as I got into the front door, I picked the phone up and I belled my mum. I told her I'd been told I'm going to die. I was quite panic-stricken. She said, "Who told you?" And I went, "What sort of question is that?" But she was quite curt with it, like, you know, is this she knew? And so the conversation ended very abruptly, to be quite honest, if I remember rightly. And we left it at that. And then Sunday night came, and off we went.
Indeed.
I have two other brothers. I also have a sister. So yeah, I had a wonderful childhood. Very protected. Already knew that within the families. I came from a family of seers. It was known. Quite well known on my mother's side of the family in Germany. So I was always protected. Always knew. Always met elders who said it was time for him to be taught. Mother was having none of that, so I stayed with mother. And this is how we kind of went along. And then everything stopped. There was no more seeing or anything like that for me. I just hid everything really until I'd seen a member of the family on the German side who came to London. And, my little brother had a very bad motorcycle accident, suffered trauma to the neck. He was always in quite a lot of pain. Ex-army, didn't like to show his feelings. And he came running upstairs and he said, "Hey man, Dieter," which is the name of my uncle, "he just touched my neck and all of the pain is gone." And I thought, I don't like that. So Dieter still had 4 days left in the UK, and I ignored him sadly for those 4 days because I somehow knew. And that's when really the drinking started. It was to keep running really. So I kept running. Was working one day, I was just saying to Jack today, I was working in London in an old lady's house. I was with another female gas engineer, and the old lady was complaining that she had a bad ear. And Michelle, the gas engineer, said, "Oh, you'll need to speak to Voodoo." They used to call me Voodoo Ray. Because I was already seeing stuff on people. And said, "Oh, what's wrong with you here and what's wrong with you there?" And it was just a bit of a laugh, really. It was nothing more than that. I didn't take it seriously. And she said, "You need to speak to Ray. He'll work on you." So I set the chair up. There's tools all on the living room. There was this lovely barley twist chair right in the middle of the living room. I put my hand to her ear, and pain stopped. We packed all our tools up, and we left. We're sitting in the van. I was a smoker there, so I'm in the passenger seat. And Michelle's there. And she put her hand over the steering wheel. And she used a swear word. She said, "Voodoo, I don't know how you do this, and you do the other stuff." And I knew then that I was at a precipice. I knew it was either jump, forget about what you're doing your whole career, or stay as you are, chase the money, forget about your own background. So I chose to chase the money. But all the while it was still a bit of a crack, still a bit of a joke. But the intuition started to come. And it became a tool with me. A tool that I still practice today. It rules my life. Journeys, phone calls, times of speaking to people. This is everything that I kind of gathered together after my MBE event.
Right, so You had another career, right, didn't you, apart from heating engineer?
I had numerous careers. I had numerous careers. I was a...
it's not going to go any further than YouTube.
That's great. I was a shop owner.
Oh, I didn't mean that.
Oh,
carry on.
No, that's all right. It's tied in with that. I was a shop owner. The shop was given to us. This is how I fell into this kind of life, which tied in with the running away. You know? It was another escape for me. So I had this job for, you could call it a job, for quite a while, for about 2 or 3 years. Again, it kind of suited the place that I was at. Everything stopped. Everything got wrapped up. We all went our separate ways, my brothers and I. I moved out of London. Then things just started to become a little bit more peculiar. Somebody said to me one day, I would like you to help me, I've got pain. Okay. Where is the pain? The same scenario again. Kind of forced into things, not wanting to, still wanted to be just off on my own, not being at anyone's beck and call. The next thing I know, this foot is put before me. I've got a sore foot, work on the foot. It was quite a forceful request. So I worked on the foot. Person got up, no pain whatsoever. I thought, fantastic, that's enough, we'll just leave that as it is. So the occupations went on. They went on through truck driving. I was a continental truck driver. Trained to be a mechanical heating engineer. The mechanical heating engineer was the last occupation, up until the call on a Wednesday, when I was told that I was going to die. So I went back into mainstream work, carried on with the rest of the plumbers, carrying on as normal, smoking and drinking, and just running, basically. And I just kept on with that kind of lifestyle until the Wednesday came around.
Right.
Beautiful. There she is. There's my teacher. That's my beautiful mother. God rest her soul. That was taken last year. Mum passed through dementia. So yeah, she's just a marvellous lady, a wonderful teacher. Still visits. I actually see her more now than I did when she was alive. You know? She really does motivate me still. What I loved about my mum, I remember when I was a child, Mum would just attract children. They would leave their mothers, and she was almost like a big Pied Piper. You know, she would have to bring children back to the parents, and I was always amazed at that, especially when I was young. But what blew me away about my mother is that she treated everyone's child on an equal basis, and I remember being quite jealous. Like, why are these children being treated the same as me when I'm your son? And I never forgot that. But I understood, probably about a year and a half ago, of Mum's ethos was that everybody got treated the same. And when people started to ask me, I have something wrong with me, can you come to see me, can you do some healing on me? I took Mum's ethos. And everybody, I don't do a lot of healing these days, well, I'm just trying to get back into it, really. I haven't had a lot of choice, kind of forced into it. But in a nice way. Is I treat everybody the same. So if it was my sister, or if it's somebody in this room, you'd be treated exactly the same. There would be no difference. And it was a beautiful legacy that my mum left me. Just one of Mum's, to me, is just wonderful. It's just beautiful, just absolutely stunning. So that's nice to see that picture, actually. She's left me with quite a few legacies, some beautiful legacies. This is Bill. Bill had a brother called Ted. Ted was all black. Ted was car fodder out in the street. He got run over. He was quite young. So Bill, he was with me for 22 years. I think he passed about 3.5, 4 years ago. When Wednesday came, when I had the "you're going to die," I was Sunday night came. I'm sitting, doing my favourite thing on a Sunday night, and I adore chocolate-covered peanuts and raisins. So I'm sitting there, I'm watching the TV, and I'm getting into it, and I thought, I've got a bit of chest pain. So throughout the week, I've been working at a gypsy fella's house. He was a big guy, really big, and I wanted some chest exercises off him. So he'd given me these chest exercises. And I'd worked in his house on a Saturday, and he said, "So how are you getting on with the exercises, Ray?" I said, "They're really tough, mine." I said, "My chest really hurts." He said, "Oh, you idiot, you're not doing it properly." So Sunday's coming, and I'm starting to get these real gnarly pains. So I started to do some press-ups. Sunday night. And the pain would stop. So I thought, that's the problem. It is a muscle problem. Don't freak, Ray. It's like, that's all it is. So I have a sound room, which is at the top of my garden, where I was eating my peanuts and raisins. Got round to about 11:30 at night. I decided that's enough. So Bill and I trots off down the garden. I get upstairs to bed, lying in bed. Turn on my side, and it's like somebody's got out a very sharp dagger, and it's just kind of stabbing right in the middle of the chest. I thought, it's that muscle again. So I've got out of bed. I'm like pushing 20 by the side of the bed. Back in the bed. I thought, oh. And then the alarm bells went off. I remember sitting on the side of the bed and the panic set in because I couldn't breathe. Do you know when you go swimming and you get to the bottom of the pool, but you've misjudged the amount of air that you've got to get back up? It was that sort of panic, just a slightly bit more intense. I thought, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. I stood up, the panic hit me. I thought, oh, for some reason I've got to go downstairs. I went downstairs, turned the living room light on. Bill's favourite spot, I couldn't keep him off the sofa. His white fur was everywhere. He was probably still on a plane going around the world as we talk. He's on the sofa, and as I turned the light on, he looked at me. And my words to Bill were, "I know, Bill. I'm really bad, mate. I don't know what's up." I've walked towards the phone, picked the phone up, hit 2 nines, and I've gone, bang, down onto the floor. The next thing I know, I'm conscious of, is this smell. It was like fishy smelling salt. That's all I can put it at. I've awoke with this rasp that hit my nose. Before I carry on with this, there's a very important part with this. Is I was already seeing and hearing things, and I kept it to myself. Bill and I, we went up to the top of the garden. Next door neighbour, their family had turned up for something, but they had a Staffordshire Bull Terrier. I was sitting at the top of the garden with Bill, and I heard the dog come running up the garden on the other side of the fence. And I swear, as I'm sitting here, I heard the dog say, "I'm going to have your cat." And I remember saying to Bill, "Did you hear that? He said he's going to have you, mate." I went, "Well, he's not." We left it at that. I walked down to the house. I'm in the bathroom, and I've heard Bill make a sound of all cats do as they're getting ready for a fight. And I remember being in the bathroom thinking, whatever cat's out there is going to be for a real tough time, because my boy can duck anyone. It wasn't another cat, it was the staffy had got into the garden. And by the time I got out into the garden, the staffy had Bill in his mouth, and he was ragging him like a dog. I was punching the dog. I punched the dog about 4 or 5 times. He was still ragging Bill. Eventually I stopped, gathered my senses, raised my fist up and dropped it down onto the dog. I seen the rib cage go convex, and the dog went pat. Bill went one way and the dog went the other with this big white beard from Bill's body. So when Bill came back, I went, "You owe me one, mate. You owe me one." So obviously, I'm now lying on the carpet. I can't say for sure that I've had my first cardiac arrest, but the doctors tell me that that was probably your first cardiac arrest rate, was in your house. So there I am, lying naked on the floor, the cat is licking my nose, I've got the phone in my hand, which is the cordless phone, and I could see that I'd managed to only hit 2 9s. So I've hit the last 9, boom, got through to the operator. Explained to her about the chest pains, I'm lying on the floor. She said, stay where you are, we'll send a medic crew to you. It was getting on to now, 11:45 at night. I've now managed to make my way upstairs, get dressed, came back, still got the phone talking to the operator, came back downstairs, sat on the sofa with Bill, and I felt so ill that I became one with the sofa. The sofa and I were one. Off in the distance, I could hear them. This must be for me. So I've left the front door open. So there I am, sitting here with Super Bill. The paramedics are coming, and they just looked like 2 angels in green. There was a man, I don't remember his name, but I remember the female paramedic. Her name was Rebecca. She looked at me and she said, you look a bit rough, fella. I went, oh, I feel dreadful. She said, let's walk you out to the ambulance. So I walked out to the ambulance. I've got no shoes and socks on. I've just got tracksuit bottoms on and my favourite t-shirt. Walked into the back of the ambulance. They've laid me down onto the gurney. So I'm there and I'm thinking, I don't know what all the fuss is about. It'll be all right. But I'm constantly being sick. It's a symptom of having cardiac arrest. Rebecca said, this is the problem, you've eaten too much. So there's all my peanuts and raisins and my cider in this little top hat bowl, sick bowl. I'm feeling terrible. I kind of looked up with this shame and I thought, well, that is the problem. I've called out the medical team because Ray's got an upset stomach. So I couldn't breathe. They put that thing on the end of my finger. And she said to me, your oxygen levels, Ray, are down to 26%. You have to breathe. But I couldn't. I just could not breathe. And I thought, in my mind, because Ray has always sailed close to the wind, and I specifically remember saying to myself, if ever there's a time to check out, now's the time to check out. I put my chin to my shoulder, and that was the last thing I remember of this earth. What happened is that I found myself, if you don't mind, I'll stand up. I'll stay where I am. Imagine I'm standing up. I've got no shoes and socks on. Now, I found myself somewhere else. It wasn't where I was. It was somewhere very special. It was vivid colours. It was just amazing. The first thing that made contact with me was the wind. And it was like the warmest, most beautiful quilt I've ever experienced. And I've realised that I'm now smaller than Ray. I'm now probably 3.5, 4 foot tall. Naked. And I've looked down at my feet. And I thought to myself, this is really rare, Ray. This is really rare. Wherever you are, you have to come back. You've got to fill your boots. Well, hypothetically speaking, you have to fill your boots to come back with this. You have to come back with some sort of evidence, But I didn't know where I was. I thought this would just be another Ray story. And as I stand there, the wind has gone through me. It's almost as if the wind has gone, yeah, he's all right. And off in the distance is 2 men, 3 women. There's an older guy who looked like Santa Claus, dressed in a white robe. Everyone was dressed in white robes. The women had beautiful hairstyles. They were just beautiful looking women, just gorgeous. The younger of the 2 looked back at me. One of the women, the first woman, she took me forward and she looked back and smiled. And I stood up and thought, great, I've been recognised. Great. Where do I go to get my wings? Was something which I actually said to me. I said, well, I must be able to get my wings here. The next woman looked past the first lady. She smiled. what she did, she said to the younger man of the two, Ray's here. And I remember standing there patiently, it seemed like forever. The younger man said something to the guy who looked like Father Christmas. I'm going to call him Fred the Angel. Fred the Angel didn't say anything. I'd found that I'd floated next to the younger guy. When I say younger, probably about my age, 50 odd. But I found myself at shoulder height with him. And I could hear him say, Ray's here. And I heard Fred the Angel say, he ain't supposed to be here. And he did that. He had a brown book that he was reading on. And the next thing I know was I was back in the ambulance. I woke up with a start. And I looked up the paramedic and she went, are you all right? I went, yes, I'm really sorry about that. I said, I was on the other side there. She said, do you go on the other side a lot, Ray? I said, yeah. I said, if you want to park up, I'll make you a cup of tea and I'll tell you about it. So I come from a family of seers. You'll love it. No, Ray, no. She leant over me and there's a clock, for any of you know, in the back of the ambulance, a red LED round circular clock. She leant over me and she flicked it. No, Ray, you died. This clock went to 0. You died at exactly 12 o'clock. Your eyes were in the back of your head. We've had to defibrillate you back. Really? I thought, no, there must be wrong. There must be wrong. But we'll run with it, because I feel great. The biggest disappointment I had was that they cut my favourite t-shirt that I got from Rarotonga. I was quite upset about that. So off we went. We're cutting through Dartford. I can see the blue lights flashing off the window. We get to Darrant Valley Hospital. The doors crash open and I've heard them say, 47-year-old male, cardiac arrest. And in I went into the resuscitation room. And it wasn't anything like it was in the back of the ambulance. It was absolutely terrifying. I actually thought that I'd been kidnapped and I was being tortured. It was that kind of trauma. As I lay on the gurney, one of the crash team, her name is Mel, she's a beautiful friend of mine now, she runs Mel's Bells Crash Team. And she leant down at eye level to me and she went, Ray, we need your next of kin's telephone number. And I remember looking at the clock, and it was now like 12:15. And I asked, am I that bad? She said, you are. She said, we don't think you're going to make it. I said, well, don't call my mum. She's not very well. So unless I go, only tell her then. So I knew then what was happening. I knew death was here. Death was in the room with me. I'd seen death. I'd seen it come from the right. I'd felt what death does. And I went, oh God. The next thing I know is my nose is now on the ceiling tiles. And with the most unbelievable pain that was going on within my chest. And I fell backwards. It was this dreadful feeling of, you know when you miss a step, when you're sure it's there, but it isn't. There's that kind of moment where time stands still, but you're still going forward. Well, this was what this was. It was that kind of experience, times 10. So I lay there, wondering what they were doing. I could hear what they were doing. They were pumping all sorts of drugs into me. Magnesium and some other stuff was always evident to me. Blacked out again, gone again. This time, I found myself in a place called The Grey. I knew nothing about The Grey until I met a researcher, a guy called Tim Tobias, who's been studying near-death experience for over 20 years. It took me nearly a whole year to get the whole scenario out. It was good for my head to get it out. And I explained to him about The Grey. I'd not told anyone about it. He said, a very small percentage of survivors talk about The Grey. Tell me about it. I said, I went there. I think it was about the third or fourth time that I passed. And there, I'd found myself, your inner self or your soul is smaller than us. Because it has to fit into us. That's how mine works. So I'd found this very me, this little tiny soul or inner self in the grey, where everything is grey, but different variants of grey. And I found myself next to a guy called California Dave, who came from California, had a tumour, brain tumour, and he'd heard about me through the Healing Trust. I was a member of the Healing Trust at the time. I found myself next to him, and I felt my shoulder disappear into his right forearm. And I've started to feel myself rise, and as I'm rising, I've got to eye level with him, and he's gone, Ray, Dave, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. Well, I don't know what I'm doing here, Dave. But as I'm still rising, I've seen the wind. And the wind in the grey is not the wind that I'd experienced the first time. The wind in the grey is black, carbon black, barbed wire. It whips across the top of people. People were really like people leaving a football stadium, just all huddled. It was cold, very cold and clammy. And as I rose up, I knew I was going back again. And again, I'm falling back onto the gurney, waking up, wondering what on earth's going on. This went on for nine times. Till eventually I smiled. Smiled at Mel, and she said, it's good to see that smile, and I knew it was all over. They wheeled me out of the crash place, the crash room, and put me onto a wall. It was now about 2 o'clock in the morning. They'd hooked me up to morphine because of the pain. They broke a few of my ribs. Some of my teeth had been broken because of the clenching and being shocked back to life. So there I was, surreal. And it was, people were being wheeled in at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning who were themselves had suffered some form of heart trouble, cardiac trouble. So they would kind of glide by me. And then morning came. I hadn't slept a lot, I was still like, what on earth's going on? And the paramedic, Rebecca, had finished her shift. And she came in, it was about 7 o'clock in the morning. She brought a friend with her. And I'm high as a kite, I'm having as much of the morphine as I can possibly take. So she came in, and I heard her say to her friend, here he is, this is the man I've been telling you about. I'm thinking, what are they talking about? She said to me, you don't know how lucky you are. And I didn't know how lucky I was, I just didn't have a clue. I still think the morning's gone on, they've fed me and taken care of me. One of the guys, his name was Barry, who was there, he was in the crash in the resus room, part of the resus team. He came in, and he stood by my bed. I'm going to use one swear word. He said to me, you are one bizarre bastard. And I said, what do you mean? He went, you are bizarre. I said, why is that, Barry? He went, when we resuscitated you, one of the times that we resuscitated you, he said, you were like a Hammer House horror. And I remembered it. They resuscitated me. And the devilish side in Ray said, we'll have a laugh. So when they finished resuscitating, bang me back to life, I came up, just like in the horror movies. And I pointed my finger at them all, and they just recoiled. Crashed back down. On the O'Brien line. So he was explaining this to me. I remember that. I remember that. So I left it as it was, you know. So the nurses come in, she said, your family's here. Now, I knew what the word family meant, but I didn't know I had a family. But I didn't recognise them, didn't know who they were. My mum is crying. My middle brother is married to a West Indian lady. So I couldn't suss out. I thought, I'll ask later. I don't know why one is a different colour to the rest of them, because everyone else on the wall was white. So I thought, I'll ask that later. And then they said, we're going to put you in for surgery. Put you in for surgery tomorrow. Like, you know, we're going to fit you with stents. I think I got about 4 or 5 stents. Get wheeled down to surgery. And they do it in-house at Darren Valley Hospital. I get wheeled in there and I meet a doctor, Dr. Winston Martin. Beautiful guy, really beautiful guy. Wheels me in, tells me what they're going to do, come up through the vein and, you know, all this sort of thing. Would you like to watch the operation, Ray? Yeah, yes, please. So it's up there on the TV, like, you know. He's got these two sort of like toy guns, and he's doing whatever he's doing, feeding this metre-long thing into me arteries. He says, so you're the chap who's been frightening my nurses then? I said, I'm really sorry about that, Doc. He said, we've left the shocker machine between your legs, you know, just in case. Oh, good. He said, they tell me that you see things on people. Word got around really quickly because it was so bizarre. Yeah. He went, so he's got his mask on, like, you know, there's theatre staff in there, he's earning his money, he's doing what he's got to do. I'm watching him thread this thing through my heart and that up on the TV screen. Do you see anything on me? I went, what? Here, in the operating room. He went, yeah. I went, is it all right if I touch you? It's a sterile room. Yeah. So, I touched him on his stomach and I touched him around the side. And then I beckoned him in and he came in close. I whispered to him and I said, do you have trouble pooing? He's a half-caste guy and he went pink. So I knew, he went, yes. He went, can you do anything? I went, yeah, okay. So I touched him while I said, well, seeing as you're working on me, Doc, I'll do the same for you. So I've worked on him. It was a success. I get wheeled out into recovery. I'm in recovery. I don't know what they put in me, but it's made me feel very strange. One of the theatre staff has come out, a beautiful lady, all gowned up, and she was great. She said, it went really well, Ray. I went, oh, thanks. She said, can I be really unprofessional? I thought, well, you can't be any worse than Dr. Martin. I said, yeah, of course you can. She said, do you see anything wrong with me? I said, do you know what's wrong with you? Because I don't just stumble in and go, oh, this, that. There are caveats, there's rules to what I do. I have to make sure, I can't just barge in and look at you. I have to wait until you give me the permission to look at you.
Can you hold the punchline?
Sorry?
Can you hold the punchline of the story?
Yes.
Right, we'll find out why in a minute. I mentioned Joseph Campbell before, and that's a picture of him. He passed, I don't know, about 10, 15, 20 years, I can't remember. And everybody in this room's on a hero's journey. And the stages of this you're going to see through the slides tonight. And Ray has been on a particular hero's journey. But I know there's other people in this room who's going to fit this. And what Campbell's tried to do is create a global story that affects everybody on the planet. And it's, as I say, it's called A Hero's Journey. And you couldn't have a better person to illustrate this. But I want to punctuate, we've already sorted this out, haven't we?
We have.
We're going to punctuate the whole experience of Ray, because this was 8 years ago, by the way, what he's telling me. So that's another quote from Joseph Campbell. And we were talking about Greece before, that's Napoli, the ancient capital of Greece, by the way. So, carry on now with your punchline.
That was a good statement. I love that. I love that little slide. Because it does tie in with it. We are on almost an equal journey. So even though I'm having a joke about it, there are many serious undertones to it. The cardiac nurse has said to me, can I be very unprofessional? Yeah, of course. Do you see anything wrong with me? Run through all of the caveat thing. Do you know what's wrong with you? Yes, she said, I know what's wrong with me. Can I touch you? I said. She went, yes. I told her where I was going to touch her. I touched her in 5 spots, and it was like an arc that ran across the top of her tummy. And the reason why I picked that was because it was like a little diamond. Each spot was a little diamond. So I said, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, that's your problem. You've had this problem for many years. She went, yeah. She said, you're absolutely right. Where you put your hand is exactly the spot. I do have a problem there. I said, and also, your husband, he's got something wrong with his left knee. Now, this is the first time I spoke to the woman. She had no wedding rings on or anything. She'd just come out of the theatre. She said, my husband. I said, yeah. She said, how do you know my husband has something wrong with him? I said, he's just been superimposed over you. I've seen what's wrong with his knee. You know? She said, for your information, my husband is an athlete. And he's coming into the hospital tomorrow to have a cartilage operation on his knee. So again, it was wonderful to know that had been recognised. That, you know, well done, Ray. We sort of left it at that, but it left me troubled. It left because it was another reinforcement of the path that I should have been on. So that was the.
Right, we're going to broaden this out. I'm just going to give you some illustrations from my life, and the reason I'm going to do this because I think just about everyone in this room will resonate with it. And what you were saying before, Ray, you probably will as well. When I was 16, I think I was hell bent on becoming a cropper on a motorbike. My father, this bike, that really the centre of gravity was somewhere above shoulder level, so if you put it round the corner, you were going to come off it. Of course, I did after the first day on it. 6 months later, I had another serious crash. This time it wasn't my fault, and how the hell I survived that, I'll never know. It's just not dissimilar to some of your stories. And I just recall about 6 other times in my life where I could honestly say I had the call. I think I had 3 I didn't have a near-death experience, but the way you defined it before, I probably did. The nearest I came to it is in 1977. I've been drinking all day in Manchester. I know some of you are geographically challenged, not least my wife at the back, who probably thinks Manchester's somewhere the other side of in the other hemisphere. But no, that's Jonathan, or is it Stewart? Anyway, this is in 1977. I've been drinking all day. My wife then and I had a serious rout in the middle of June. It had been raining. I got into my car and I drove home about 20 miles. Next thing, I woke up in hospital. What's this about? And what had happened was I turned the car upside down in a field, and had I not got a seatbelt on, but of course everybody had seatbelts on, I wouldn't be here talking to you. But the key to this story was the car I bought. I was a student at the time, a mature student. It had a built-in headrest. It was a Cortina GT, and it was the only car I could afford that had built-in headrest. Had it not had built-in headrest, it would have crushed my skull. And because I've been drinking all day, I woke up in hospital. I didn't know how I felt, but I sneaked out. Look, not sitting here. So I put my clothes on and went home. And I think the next day, I didn't really remember much about it. The next day I got a visit from the police, and I remember this policeman walking up the road. I thought, oh, he's going to tell me, breathalyze all this nonsense. And he looked so miserable, I thought, what's wrong with him? And he said, well, you'd be pleased to know you were okay. We took a blood test, and it was all right. How the hell that happened, I'll never, ever know. I must have drunk 10 pints, but it was ridiculous. But what I did discover was, I'd written this car off, and apparently the fire brigade, I have no memory of this, by the way. The fire brigade I think they kept the police away, because, they thought I was dead in the bloody car. They'd cut me out and got me to hospital. But what I didn't realise at the time is the field in which this car was crashed was opposite my birth mother's house, and I didn't know that until 30 years later. And I'll never get near to death than that because it's completely white. It's in there somewhere. And so that was pretty near the mark. And did my life change after that? Not for a couple of years. I got married and divorced. I suppose it was on a bit of a slow burn, but quite interesting. So I can relate to a lot of what you're saying. The reason I'm sharing this with you is that I'm sure some of you have had experiences whereby something serious has happened, and how much has it shook you up? Has it made a difference to your life? What have you done about it? It really didn't do a lot. I just carried on the way I normally did. It didn't really have a lot of effect on me. But with hindsight, it probably did. So the thing is about Ray's situation, the call, for some people comes, you had some forewarning of it, didn't you?
Yeah.
Your mother had already predicted it, but you carried on.
Yes.
Now, the last thing I'm going to say here before we go on to the next slide, I work for Manchester Housing Department, and I was the man. Manchester Housing Department was important to me, because in the 80s, it was outside of London, the place for equal opportunities. And even though I was about of a third level, I probably had more power and clout and influence in that department than anybody else. And I was off the scale ego. I wear a pair of tinted green glasses, look like David Bowie. You name it, you know, I just walked through the place as if I owned it. About 1,000 people were there. And my intention was to reunite the competing factions in this place. And the reason I say that is there are about 20 offices, and there's 1,000 people work there. And what the managers have done is they recruited people according to their union affiliation, so that if ever there was a problem in the department, half the staff would work because they were in Nelgo, and half the staff would be out on strike because they were in Newport or the other way around. Now, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? You'll always have people working. But you can imagine what that did for relations between the staff. It was like that. So I did a number of things and all this, and I remember my wife, Anne, saying to me at the time, this is all going to end in tears. So what do you mean? I said, well, I can see you've got 2 paths ahead of you. One, if you take it slowly, take it easy, you know, do the right things, slow the whole thing down, that's going to be fine. But if you carry on the way you're going to go, it's going to end in tears. Stop that. Because Mr. Ego, there's no way I did this to a damn word. And it blew up in such a way, it took me 12 months to actually be able to talk about it. It's a long, long story. I've written about it in this book I'm writing. Again, it was another call to awake, and another call. I didn't hear it. And so this often happens. But you didn't have a lot of choice.
But, I didn't have a lot of choice.
No, I did. That's the whole point.
Which, yes. So it's. I think many of us are given a choice, but because of the way our lives are structured, like mortgages and things like that, what made me avoid the call was I've got a cat to feed, man. I've got. Do you know what I mean? I've got a house to take care of the house. So the call can go and clear off. So it didn't. And I think there's a time for everyone who has their call. Some of us probably hear the call every day, but because of many of us in this room are probably a lot more savvy than we were maybe 25, 30 years ago. So many of us will look back and go, So I think I've been very fortunate like Jack. It's just the way, in one way I've been very fortunate. It's just the way life fell for me. It was, this is what you're going to do. You can kick and scream as much as you want, but this is the road you're going down. The call is easy to miss, but when you do respond to it, once you identify it, or if life allows you to respond to that call, some of us can't give up. So some of us respond more than others to the call, but we all respond. You don't have to have my near-death moment to respond.
No, you wouldn't recommend it, would you?
I wouldn't. It's very painful. It can upset the day, so I'd always be aware of that. But it's something which I don't normally like to talk about the specific event. There's a lot that I've spoken about here this evening which I haven't spoken about because it needs to be kept contained, because it still touches me on a trauma side of things. So it's nice to talk about this, but I just want to make sure that for those who have got the call, you don't have to die to respond to it. But what you do need, you need to be speaking to somebody who knows about the call, because you'll save yourself a lot of grief. So, don't think, oh my goodness gracious me, we haven't got time here, sadly, for me to cover some of the things that I've done. Some of the things that I have done, I don't even believe myself. But you don't need to die the amount of times that I have to get to a level where many of us want to be. We just need a beautiful Arab guy who I know, who is now the Attorney of Law for Saudi Arabia. He said to me, Ray, we're all ignorant until we're taught. I thought, you know what, I'm never going to forget that. And it was so true. And I think this applies to... My mum said to me, your job is to help people. And I bloody hated it when she said that. No, I'm not here to look after people. But she's correct. I am here to help people. I've travelled the world to help people. Money isn't an issue to me. It's just not an issue to me. After that, there isn't a lot spare. But there is a compulsion to help others. And there isn't, I don't expect anything back, because that's what I'm back here to do. So, I would hate for people to come out of here tonight and go, oh gosh, I'll never do things that he's been talking about because he's had so many near deaths. You couldn't be further from the truth. The catalyst to all of this, the thing that just went, look out kahunas, here it comes, was the death. But it's after. It was the final life. This is what you got to do. This is what you have to carry on with.
So, you didn't refuse the call in the end?
In the end, I refused the call up until I had the cardiac arrests. I was still very belligerent, I think that's the word. I never seen myself as a survivor. Because of the oxygen starvation, it has affected my brain. I can't do the work I used to do because I'm now unsafe. I forget things. I've had so many kitchen fires, it's been unbelievable. I just forget things are on. But the refusal now is completely the opposite. Now it's something which I've been finely tuning over the last...
Which is that?
Which is committing to the call.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I just want to ask you, what did you draw upon to survive this? To die 10 times is pretty heavy-duty stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very heavy.
What do you think you drew upon? Because most people would have gone down. They would have gone.
The disturbing side about this, which I'm now, I started my final years now as a trainee psychotherapist to deal with the trauma of near death. Because you won't believe, people like me are as rare as rocking horse poo. There ain't, for many of us who do go back into to help others, but coming from an experience point of view is everything. So coming to the call is kind of what I stepped up to. I survived it because the brain didn't work properly. It didn't register a lot. I forget a lot of things. But I met a lady yesterday who had the same symptoms as me, didn't go as many times as me, but had the same sort of experience. They put the old blasters on her and brought her back. She was out of body watching her mum on the floor sobbing and asking the doctors to do things for her. She was sectioned for 2 years, straight jacket, tied down, drugs administered, because she didn't know what was going on. So the call for me is to help people to do that. And the hospital that saved my life said, Ray, come back. We've got big wigs here for the NHS. They want to hear what you've got to say. How can we help those who've had cardiac arrest? And there's tens of thousands of us around the world. And it doesn't just affect me, it affects everyone in your family. I remember saying to my sister, and I feel a bit choked when I say it, I don't love you or mum anymore. And she was devastated. Because I didn't know them, and I now run an NDE UK group to help people. So it's on a clinical level. There's a massive spiritual side to Raymond. It's huge. But there's also a side which needs to be heard to, and doctors don't listen to Ray woo-woo. They'll listen to a Ray who comes from a clinical point of view, who starts to describe the symptoms in their clinical terms, in their medical terms, so they can understand. So they can present my evidence to their peers and go, well, this is what's happening to him, this is what's happening to our patients. A wonderful meeting, so out of this meeting came that. But last year, I gave a talk in Pall Mall that was just wonderful. There was cardiac arrest consultants and crash teams there. There was people who were survivors. The sobbing in the back row was, wow. They said the reason, the doctor said, the reason why we've asked you survivors here is because many of you are surviving, but many of you are coming back with psychological problems. And we need to deal with this not only on a clinical level, but on a spiritual level. And I could have kissed the bloke. I'm not joking. It was like music to my ears. So I haven't got time to explain how I ended up on this course, but at the talk with the big wigs from the NHS, in the audience, to condense it right down, at the end of the talk, one of the big wigs said, Ray, if you could help anyone here in this hospital, how would you tell us to help them? I said, you need a Ray in every hospital. I would like to have a room here. I'll do it for nothing, you know, just so nobody goes through what I've gone through, and their families. And at the end of the talk, doctors came up to me and they shook my hand, and I never thought of this effect. But out of the audience came a paramedic, and he happened to have the local paper. And there was an advert in there, and there's a School of Excellence. It's called Walk Tall. It's a counselling service in Northfleet, in Kent. It's sponsored by Children in Need. It's a wonderful, wonderful charity. And the tutors there are amazing. Just the two of them are just amazing. So they'd advertised they wanted to set up this course, and they wanted counsellors, to train counsellors. And he came up with this advert. He said, I heard what you said, and I think you might be interested in this. So I went for the interview, and that was over nearly 3 years ago now. So this year is my last year of it. And the wonderful thing is about committing to the call is that with the crash team who saved my life, I was back in cardiac rehab having a cup of tea with them and just having a general gas, and said, Ray, would you be interested in seeing some of the patients, the cardiac arrest patients? We want to start a pilot scheme for this. And it's the very first one in the UK. So for me to be able to respond to that on a clinical level is just wonderful. So yeah, so to commit to the call is where I'm at to be honest with you. So it's wonderful. It's really wonderful.
I'm going to take questions in a minute. I just want to illustrate the next few slides. Ray's illustrated that with his own experience. These are just the stage of the journey. Committing to the call is crossing the threshold and point of no return. You had no choice, you were there.
Yes, yes.
Now this is an interesting one, finding mentors. Who were your mentors?
One of the biggest mentors had one eye, teeth missing, scarred all over the face, half the fur missing on the tail. Right? I called her One Eye. At the top of my garden, I would always go up every morning. It was a religious thing for me. Break some bread, throw it up onto the roof, walk back down. I could always hear the foxes in my garden at night. Always had an affiliation. Somehow, while I was building this sound room, we could hear the foxes yelping in the evening. And my friend said, what's that? I said, it's the foxes. Don't get foxes here. Next thing, a fox pup coming out between his legs. Oh, there you go. It disappeared again. So, throwing the bread up onto the roof. This was one of my mentors. Threw the bread up on the roof, turned my back, walking back towards my house, down the garden. I've heard something speak to me. I can't tell you what it said. It was more like a sound emotion. But it stopped me, and I turned around. And there, up on the roof of my sound room, was this one-eyed vixen fox. And I said to her, do you want some food? She went, yeah. I said, come down the house. She got onto the brick wall, walked down the garden. My garden's over 100 foot long. She walked down the garden on her wall, looking at me, till we got to the house. Dropped down and sat outside my kitchen door. 'Cause I was And eventually, she brought her pup. And I was in a bad frame of mind, in a very bad place. Nobody who I could talk to, my doctors didn't have a clue, because nobody was listening. Nobody could see me, even on a clinical, psychological, psychiatry level. No one had a focus. A lot of counsellors would just sit and cry in front of me and go, I don't know what to say, Ray. So I would end up counselling them, which is a great experience, but that wasn't the purpose of it. And then one eye turned up, and I looked at one eye, something had bit her eye, like bit her eye out, her right eye, and there was all scars on her nose, and got some wonderful pictures where she brought her pup. And I remember sitting there, well, it was every morning she came for her cheese and cherries, and she liked jam sandwiches. She sat in front of me with this one eye. She looked at me as I gave her some cherries one day. She licked my fingers and I tickled under her chin. And that's when I said to myself, do you know what? Ray, she's got an eye missing, she's got so many scars, she's got mange, but she's still carrying on. And that was a turning point for me. The strength of that I gained from that was just incredible. So the affinity with animals and myself, we'd actually need another talk to cover that. Is just been great. So the mentoring, because it's non-judgmental for me. They came to see me. I don't know why they came to see me, but they came to see me. Now I have crows come to see me. Now I have magpies at the kitchen door. There's a new fox in town. So these are my mentors. I very rarely, the only other mentor I had was my mother. My mother was my grandmaster. There was two sides to her. There was the spiritual seeing side, which she got from her own mother, and so she was the only one who was the animals.
I'm just going to show, this is what we all face. I think the questions can cover that.
Yeah, the experience of eternity right here is now the function of life. Heaven is not the place to have the experience. Here is the place to have the experience. Yes. For me, the catalyst was, I very rarely use the term heaven because of the PC world that we live in now. I have to be very careful about how and when I relate the story. It is a great experience, but it can also be a very dangerous experience. I've been threatened a lot, my life's been threatened. I've been attacked by religious people. So yeah, you've got to be quite on it. You've got to be very brave to go for. But once you do, then I mean, how much more beautiful? For me, this is beautiful to sit here, and you've all come out tonight on a Friday night. It'll take me a long time to filter that through, to be honest with you. So it has a profound effect on me. The energies that you all have here won't go to waste. It will be put back into others. So yeah, it means a heck of a lot. That is, because you've got to be very open-minded to come out. And I can't tell you how much I'm touched by that. I really am.
Let's take a break, and then we'll resume in about 10 minutes. We were talking before. Ray asked me, has it gone according to the plan? Well, if you think about it, wasn't it John Lennon who said, if you want to make God laugh? Perhaps he didn't. I'm hopeless on quotes telling me plans. Does life work out in a linear, sequential, predictable way? Of course it doesn't. So we just put a script together. It's loosely being followed. Who cares? So, has anybody got any questions? Go on. Let me have it. A lovely lady.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you this question. I mean, in your case, you sort of answered it. But do you think that if you don't answer the call, the knock will keep coming and keep coming and keep coming, and opportunities will be provided for you to answer for as long as it takes, or will they give up somewhere along the line if you're not responsive?
There's a couple of answers to that. I actually, if you had have asked me that question a couple of years ago, I wish they had given up, because then life would have been much more easier for me. It's a question that it's a great question. It's a question that I often put to myself. And all I can say in answer to that is on a humanistic level, I knew that I had to change, but I didn't change. So whoever was in control, however you want to describe it, put me in a spot where I had no choice. And I can't, people say, oh my gosh, you're so lucky to be here, and do you know how very rare it is? Only 6% survive coming back from cardiac arrest, but only 1% come back with, like me, almost everything functioning. Many have come back, have been in comas, lost their sight, use of limbs and so forth. So I've been extremely lucky. An honest answer to you, which I hope covers it, is that when I wasn't listening to the call, oh, blimey Riley, yeah, I think I've paid a price. I feel like I'd been taken away and somebody gave me the biggest kicking that I've ever had.
Well, in my own experience recently, over the last 3 years, I'm a teacher, and things have happened with my job where my hours have reduced, not necessarily because I've wanted it, and I started writing 10 years ago.
Fantastic.
And on a personal level, I feel that's what I'm meant to do. That's my helping, if you like.
Wonderful, yeah.
I do. But I was just worried I'd miss the boat if I didn't listen.
No.
I have listened and heard, but if I can't quite do it right now,
Well, the proof of the pudding is that you're here. You're here tonight with everybody else. So, many people don't even get off the backside to make an effort to improve themselves, because we're not taught this way. We're taught, our life scripts are get married, have children, have a house, go to work, do your very best, and then it's 7 foot under that, So to change that I think is very brave, to come here tonight and hear what I've got to say in Jack. Many people won't do that because they fear it will change their life.
Can I answer that as well?
Yeah.
Campbell's mantra was follow your bliss, and most of us are conditioned to, exactly as Ray says, earn enough money, do what you can, get enough money to enjoy yourself. And most people don't make it, the overwhelming majority. So what Campbell says, follow your bliss and the money will follow. And take a risk. Take a risk.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, some of you may have heard of Neil Donald Walsh, a American spiritual teacher who wrote the books Conversations with God. And he said his dad was about 94, 95 on his deathbed. And he turned, just before he was due to pass to Neil, and said, what's it all about? Well, I don't want to wait till I ever get there, till I'm 95. So, some of the things you've seen, some of the quotes, follow your bliss. You get one chance at this incarnation. Go for it. That's my advice. But I didn't say that, did I? Of course I did. For God's sake, get on with it.
And then thank you, I'm successful.
Right, any other questions? Thank you. That's brilliant.
Thank you. Great question.
Yes, I'd like to ask a question. When I was 14 months old, our house burned down and I nearly went with it. But since then, I haven't stopped running. And I seem to be busy all the time. I'm a nurse. And I would stand in the ward and a patient's gone to theatre. And I think, oh my goodness, we should have sent to Thomas's splint. And they say to me, nonsense, that's not what he's gone for. The next thing, theatre's on the phone saying we need a Thomas's splint. This has happened to me all my life.
Fascinating.
And the experiences I've had were so much that I was nicknamed Jonah.
Oh, that's a bit unfair.
And when I was off night duty one night, the nurses discussed that they'd seen fractured femurs, but they'd never seen a bilateral fractured femur. And they said, never mind, when he comes in, Jonah will be on duty. He did the next night. So what I want to know is, what is this all about? Should I be doing more? Should I be doing less? Or should I just accept as it comes along and do something?
Love that question. You sound like you're almost walking in your footsteps. It was. I did a TV interview with Sky with Amit Kate, and I was just explaining it to Rick.
That's how we met, by the way.
That's yes.
Yes.
It's the. You're obviously very intuitive. I'd like to speak to you more because there is a lot you can do, and I'd like to sit down and actually define what you mean by running. Because you sound very similar to me. It's like, no, I'm not doing that. You know, I'll smother it with and this. So it would be wonderful. Perhaps we could swap telephone numbers because it's so. There is no mysticism here. Every one of you in this room can practice and improve your skills. It's like I said it today. I sound like an old record. I play guitar. But if I didn't practice that skill, I wouldn't be able to play. But it's having the right teacher to tell you what the skills are. And I've made a point of coming into that arena of teaching, of not being judgmental, not running it off my own ego, because I know what happens when I go down that route. I'm not giving my best to the person who wants to know. So it's a real. I'm really blown away by what's going on here this evening. I really am, because it's unique. It's very unique to do this, and to hear people who have similar experiences just makes me drive on more. So there's very simple, attainable, not unattainable. I was, how can I say, just to sum up with that. I like to teach people things that are attainable and not unobtainable. A lot of stuff I was very much into Carlos Castaneda and the American ways of Indianism, and then I realised I read a paragraph one day that I had to run around my house stark naked when there's a full moon. And I thought, well, one, I don't live in the desert, two, I'd be arrested for running around my house, so how can I apply what I've learned on that humanistic level of a purely experience level? What I would depart to you, what I'm departing to everyone here, is primary knowledge. It hasn't come out of a book. It's come from Ray O'Brien's mishaps, Ray O'Brien's pain, and I'm starting to recognise that there's many of us who are exactly the same. But it's such a big thing to change. So I would love to impart to you some of the really basic stuff. A quick one is, which started me off, I explained it to Rick, I call it the cup method. And we've all done it, we've all said it to ourselves, why don't I listen to myself? Have we all done that? When something goes wrong, you know, why didn't I move the cup? And you walk away from it, and it's almost as if the cup goes, you're going to knock me over. And so, to see what I mean? So these are very simple things which we disregard. Oh, I knew he was going to call. You know, how did you know that? I don't know, I just knew. So this is where I focus in on. I focus in on the very simple things that we're doing day in and day out. And I have it to a level now where I understand that feeling when I go against it. This is my vehicle. This is what carries the inner ray around. This and my brain will do the inner ray harm, will do the body harm. But the inner ray will not do the body harm. The trick is to listen to the inner self of you, and that's what I want to teach. This is what I'm starting to build a model together. I've done a great deal of research with other cardiac arrest victims, and most of them are telling me the same. Many of us who've had trauma come back. It's a scientific fact now that between 10 and 20% of us who've had trauma come back with another form of skill. But many of us are not going to talk about it. It takes meetings like this. This is almost like a clandestine meeting. So yes, so they're returning with the gift. So it's beautiful. So it's what I will impart to anybody who wants to know is how do I practice the art of, I call it seeing, and because I also use that art to see illnesses on people on a seeing level. Again, it was something which I thought was going to drive me mad, so I have to quantify, and I had to find a way and a method. And the method I come up with is what everybody does. Why don't I listen to myself? And that's what I focus everything in. So it's a sensitive one.
But other people walk with me. I don't walk alone. Wherever I went, a man with a suitcase went with me. And the children in the children's ward would complain and say, he's put the suitcase on my foot, or tell this man to go away, he's playing with my traction.
Wonderful.
And things like that.
Wonderful.
And I thought, oh, this must be this. Oh, even a little child said, dare, dare. So I used to put a blanket over so you couldn't see where I was looking. And I knew the ward was haunted because I could hear the doors opening and closing. And anyway, after I'd done my night duty on that ward, I went on to day duty. The system was a bit different there. A year later, I was back on night duty. And this time I was in a female coloured ward. That was when apartheid still reigned, but there weren't black nurses. So we had Muslims, we had Cape coloured, we had black ladies, we had all sorts. And all the Muslim ladies were lying with their sheets over their heads. And I said, what's the matter with you? It's a hot night. I'll open even more windows if you like, but you mustn't, you can't breathe like that. And they said, oh, but we're so frightened, nurse. And I said, why are you frightened? They said, the old man with the suitcase is walking behind you all the time. Dropped me over with a feather. And this went on until I was in my last year. And a man was sitting there reading his paper at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I said to him, look, it won't do you any good this, Try and get some rest. If I make you a nice cup of tea, would you put your paper down and go to sleep? He said, no, why should I? That man with a suitcase is always walking behind you. I'm keeping an eye on you. And I went out in the corridor and I couldn't see this person, although I do sometimes see things. And I said to him, I'm sorry. I don't want to be unkind, but please, could you go away? He did. And that man promptly died the next morning, unexpectedly. And I felt so awful. Every time I talk about it, I get goosebumps.
Oh, I thank you for sharing that. Do you know what? I want to talk to you even more because I know that you have knowledge which would help myself and could pass on to others. So that's a wonderful story. And how are you now with everything? May I ask?
At the moment, things seem to be a bit quieter.
Okay.
I've retired now,
Right.
and I used to look after neighbours and people that. There's so much story to tell.
I can imagine.
Yes,
I can imagine.
At the moment, things are a bit quiet.
Good.
But it doesn't stay that way.
Does it? Yeah, there's always a calm. I won't say storm, but there's normally the way it kind of works for me is that things go quiet, and I noticed it by the absence of what I normally pick up. And a couple of times when Mum was alive, she would just ask me very casually, "Well, how are things?" And I would automatically assume she would be talking about work. And so I'd go off about work or other things, and she would always no, I'm not talking about that. She went, "You know what I'm talking about." I said, "Well, it's gone quiet, Mum." "Oh, it's gone quiet for a reason," she said. So I would normally find that the quietness comes, when the quiet's finished, you normally come back with another skill.
Oh, right.
Yeah, you're nodding just behind us. You're saying lovely lady. Yeah? So, this is the benefit of this. It's like, if we're all isolated, we're all sitting on our own, we're not talking to the right people, we're not listened to. But look at us all here. We're all singing off the same song sheet, but it's being dismissed. So I think now is that time where whatever's going on this planet, people are changing, and they're changing for the better. And I love that. So
we were talking about this before, weren't we? The frustration I feel is just not enough time to cover all this. It's just fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just a privilege to sit here in front of you. Yeah, we talked about that. And, well, I mean, just on that, Ray, it'll probably come out in the second part. We're going to do a workshop next year with the Ray O'Brien healing method.
That would be nice. That would be really nice. Yeah.
Which is pretty unique. I've met a lot of healers in my life. This man's one of the best. So we're going to do that next year.
I like that. I don't really like that. It would be therapeutic. You know, again, I don't do what I do for mucho dinero. It doesn't matter. Money isn't anything. I know it's a given. We all got to have it. I know that. But as long as I get enough, and I'm just getting enough, and I'm pleased with that, it allows me to come up here and do whatever I want. I don't take any funding for what I do because it doesn't feel right to me. What feels right is to sit here and just talk to you all.
You can't be bribe, can you?
No, I can't. Unless, although I must say I do break for cake. So,
or raisins, peanuts and chocolate.
Peanuts, chocolate, peanuts and raisins, yeah.
That's still what's on there.
I am, unfortunately.
Some of these names may be known. Have any of you heard of Daniel Brinkley?
Yeah.
Yes, phenomenal man. He was a small town thug, by his own admission, self-confessed bastard. Films made about his life. He became a sniper and an assassin for the American government. He worked in Vietnam. One of his tasks was to assassinate a Vietnamese general. He couldn't get a clear shot on him. So he was in a hotel, he threw a grenade in and killed about 12 people. That's the kind of person we're talking about. Anyway, when he came out of all that, he was struck down by lightning. All his books are called Into the Light, Struck by the Light, whatever the light. He was suspended in mid-air by this lightning blast. He was taken to hospital. He was dead. He had a sheet thrown on him for 20 minutes. He visited the other world. And he came back with a mission to reform the American health system and to become a prophet. I would recommend him very strongly to you. He was struck down by lightning again. Some years later, he's also had a triple heart bypass. Ibn Alexander was a neurosurgeon who thought all this kind of thing that Ray's talking about was mumbo jumbo. He ended up with some kind of meningitis. He was almost brain dead. A person who's not here tonight, unfortunately, but has actually met him. He's completely changed his life. He's gone from being a bow-tied, arrogant man to being an ambassador of the spirit. I would recommend him to you as well. And Kelly Walsh is someone we met through Anna Kent. Kelly lives in Bolton. She's had a near-death experience. She's co-authored a book. There it is. So you don't have to go to America. All the spiritual teachers on the planet do not live in Los Angeles or California. Some of them actually live here. Here's one of them. That's your web page, is it not?
Yes, that is the web page. If I just may say, the web page was started by another lady who her name is Gahani Strella. She's an actress. She was on TV a couple of days back with Dominic
Sandra.
Cumberbatch.
And
And she bled to death and they brought back. So she set up the page 3 years ago. I met her at a first group meeting in Hoxton in East London. And as soon as I turned up, I took the crash helmet off and the head just went poof! And it caught her eye and she went, ah! And since then we've been fabulous friends. So I have been running this ND page. We met up last week in central London, doing a little bit more filming there. So we're developing it, the page, on everything that I've been talking about today. So it's to get to more people who are suffering on a psychological level. Not so much, we can deal with the spiritual level, which is great, and I will, but I'm thinking about, I'll keep this on a clinical level, but the spiritual side of things will be a separate site to that, so we're working out a new website for that. But
Post-death experience.
Sorry?
Post-death experience.
Yes. Or even pre-death. Many of us, as I said, have a warning. We already know. But it's where'd you go with that? Who can you talk to? I mean, we can go Jonathan. We can go Jack. We can go Vanessa, and probably some others in this room. I bet there's a lot of you in this room that have really underestimated your skills in what you do. Because that's what peer pressure is. You can't go into school and sit down there over your coffee and go, oh, see that ghost yesterday? They'll be going. So it's kind of like a really closed shop. But it's a real underground movement.
That was another synchronicity. Years ago, I had the privilege of working some of it, I don't know if any heard of a bloke called Bob Stipe, does that name mean anything to you? He was head teacher in the West Midlands in Darlington near Walsall. And Bob was the over 50s world powerlifting champion. He was that wide. Bob was Mr. Charisma. You could feel him. If Bob was walking down from the station, wherever the station is, you'd feel it. Unfortunately, he passed a few years ago. If there's any trouble in the school, I remember once there was some trouble, and this 15-year-old was kicking up in the class. Bob went down to the class and put him over his shoulder and carried him to his room. That's the way I can help with things. And I'm not bloody clue why I'm telling this story. That's right, it's interesting, Jack. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Don't tell me that. And I haven't had 10 near-death experiences, Ray. It's, this. The point I'm trying to get to, that's right, when we were talking, when we were designing this thing, I asked Ray, did you want to just stand up and talk? And he didn't, did he? No. So I said, okay, well, I'll interview you. I said, well, I've been seeing, Ray's done a few interviews, and you can find them on YouTube, give the references. Yeah. And I thought, well, one of the problems is, with this phenomenal experience, how the hell do you track this? I mean, is anybody going to have 10 NDEs in this room? God forbid. It's unique, isn't it? I think it's almost unique.
Pretty much.
Pretty much unique on the planet.
Yeah.
So how do you make sense of all this? So I thought, well, let's think of a context. And this thing came to me. And one of the quotes from Neil Donald Walsh is that we all have lives overflowing with significance, but we don't know it. So how the hell do we awaken to all this? Because Ray will be the first one to say this. Well, you've said it already tonight. Everybody in this room has a gift. Everybody in this room has all this together. It's how you express it, what you do about it. So one of the things Vanessa and I are going to be looking at is this thing in the new year. So we're going to be running workshops on it. The heroic journey. Also writing a book about my personal experiences, which that's another quote from Campbell, by the way. Some of you know what this is about, so I'm not going to go into detail. The book will come out next year. I think that's what you've done, isn't it, Ray?
I've tried, and I'm still trying. It wasn't. Again, it's like anything. When I came back, I didn't know who Ray was. Didn't have a clue. Didn't know how I behaved. It's practice again. It's nothing more than practicing what you know is in there. But it's like anything. I could go to a really crap guitar teacher and learn nothing. But I could find a good one. And he would pick out my good points. So I feel, because of the way many of us have been looked at, it's only quantum physics that have opened up everything. Which gives us an idea about what's going on. And I love that. I don't understand how it is. But what I love about it is that it's because us as humans are so sceptical, and we need it's got to be evidenced, and then we need the stupid Joey who I've had, who comes on stage and his job is just to come on stage to try to make me look an idiot. He did fail, but that's what we're up against. So when we find somebody who can teach us this, and I ain't saying I'm the best teacher on the planet, because I'm still learning. It's only been, remember I spent 5 years in isolation, cut away from my family, didn't speak to, I have no real friends anymore, because I don't know them, I don't know them. So it's only the last 3 years where I've come out into the light, for want of a better word. And with that, it's just kind of... Jonathan said something to me earlier on. Things have just gone bang since the passing of my mother in January. It's been... And one of the last words she said in one of her last breaths, she touched me on the arm and she said, "You'll be all right. I know you'll be all right." And that was... But I knew where she was coming from. So it's just having the right knowledge and things that are attainable, because a lot of us give up. You know, we all should be on... I know I should be on a diet, but I think I'll start the diet Monday, and then someone says it's Monday, and I go, "Oh, all right, I'll start it next Monday." So it's that practicing all of the time, and that's what I'm trying to do, is to keep it the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. There's no need for me. It works for me to keep it very simple. I think it's part of the German in me, the logical side, and the Irish side of me is just a little bit wild. So that's what I love. I love that you're starting this up, and I love that we've met, and how we met. I just love. I can't say it enough. I love being here tonight because it's a two-way street. It's not just me talking to you guys. It's what I'm hearing back from you. And that really means a lot to me, it really does. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it.
What advice could you give to those still in a conscious state, not quite ready to follow their calling, but have it?
I would say find somebody who has been there, seen it, done it. Somebody like you. This is why they come to you, because of your skill set. I love that. I love it. So if I wanted to come to see a medium, there would be nobody else I would go to apart from you. It's part of the intuitiveness, and again, it needs to be taught, because it's, as I said earlier, the brain and the body will put you wrong, but the inner soul will not put you wrong. And the key to that is understanding what the inner self is telling you, which brings me right back to the simple thing of, I'll leave that cup there. So it's picking that right person. So that would be the generic answer to that.
Thank you. Finally, my third and
Yes?
final leading question is, do you have any idea if it's going to repeat itself and happen again?
What, my cardiac arrest?
Or something similar in that transition?
I've had, my answer to that is I've had many moments where I've stood and waited for it. I've had the exact same symptoms. I just sat and waited for it, just like, here it comes. The fear has gone, the fear of death. For me, it was extremely painful. It was like really traumatic. And studies sometimes, I can't watch 24 hours in A&E. I'm out the door. I popped round to the shops the other day. There was an ambulance outside Sainsbury's. Doors were open. Stupidly, I stood there and stared at it. Got home, just a bag of frozen tears, mate. Just sobbing. Because this came with complex PTSD, which was something else that is now being looked at. So the...
I'll help you with that.
Sorry?
I can help you with that.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
I suppose my question is, how can I help those people who are at that threshold, who know they're dying because they've been given a terminal diagnosis, and they know they're dying soon, and more often than not I know when they're going to die, but obviously don't say so, but I am finding it very difficult to make that bridge so that I can reassure somebody that it's, as you say, the warm wind, and obviously, it's very difficult to explain that. I'm looking to bridge that gap between the clinical side of dying and the spiritual side of dying. So maybe that's something you and Jack will be covering in your healing workshops or something, I don't know, but could I just leave that with you as a thought?
I have an answer for you. And I'll try and make it as brief as I can, but as informative as I can. I went back to cardiac the cardiac rehab. The nurse said to me, now you can't do your work anymore, what are you going to do? And it was, no one had ever said that to me, you know. And I panicked. I said, I'll get a room here and I'll come from a family seers, da 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 da. What do you mean you come from a family seers? Oh, I see cancers and things like that. Do you really? Yeah, I do, like, you know. And then she hit me with this question, bang, do I have cancer A? Woo! Wow.